Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and there is no greater historical story to prove that point than that of Boudica, the ancient British queen that took Rome by the horns and kicked their ass thoroughly. Now, I happened to record this episode on National Women's Day, and I didn't even plan it. Today we have special guest Charlotte on to help us discuss Boudica's life, her achievements, and her cultural impact as it comes to, the British Isles as well as just women in general. So please sit back and enjoy as we talk about strong, independent women that don't need no Rome. And remember, this is not your daddy's history. Today is National Women's Day, so happy kind of birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I've been good. As I told you before, I went down to Texas last week, and that was a lot of fun. It's insane because, like, here there's maybe one mic a night if we're lucky. There's 4 on a Monday night, not including Killtony. Yeah.
Jesus.
So it's like you can feel it in the fucking air, like
Yeah.
everything. It's like Jesus fucking Christ.
That's not even what it's like. Like, not even without COVID. Like Baltimore isn't even like that. You know, maybe you'll have 2 a night in the same night. You know, maybe down the street from one another, but 4. That's insane.
Yeah, and like I said, that's not including Killtony. And like, I will say the one thing that we did know, the homeless are much different than in Baltimore. And I don't know if like we assume that part of it is like Southern hospitality kind of shit because people down south are very nice, like creepily nice. When you know that deep down they probably want to shoot you. But like the homeless will follow you into stores to ask you for money and shit. Yeah. Like that doesn't happen here in Baltimore. So that's really fucking weird to me.
Yeah, when I was living in Georgia for a time, that's how it was there as well. Like you'd be on the street, maybe smoking or just hanging out with people, whatever, and people would just have no problem walking up to you like, "Hey man, how's it going? I'm having a hard time. Do you have 73 cents on you?" And that was the thing that I found weird too, was they asked for specific amounts. Like 25 cents. It wasn't 50 cents. They would ask for like 42 cents.
Right. That's fucking. Oh my god.
And it's so strange. And but like when I talked to somebody about that, they said that it's almost like a homeless algorithm where like they asked that for a reason. Where they're like, yeah, they asked for 43 because, you know, like you'll give them a quarter, but you're not going to give them 50 cents because 50 cents is that's a can of soda, depending on the vending machine, right? That's some gum, right? Like that's change that you can use. But like 25 cents, that's nothing. But so then if they go a little bit higher and they go like 42 cents, well then you'll pull out and count. You're not going to count out 42 cents, but let's say if you have 50 and it's close enough, you go, yeah, sure, here you go. So it's like a mind thing where they like will ask for the right amount of money, because then they're like, let's say 3 people give you 42 cents, or rounded about, right? That like 3 people give you that, boom, that's like a can of beer.
Right.
And, you know, and it's like, damn, dude, I didn't think they were thinking that hard.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like how the like different corporations and shit, they price their shit, so it's like $2.99. It makes you feel like you're buying something for $2 as opposed to 3. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing.
I'm like, man, they are working on a fucking higher level,
right?
But so to get into today's topic, like I said, today we were recording this on National Women's Day. I did not plan that out. I did not plan that out at all. Like, when I talked to you about coming on to the show, I knew I was like, you know what, I'll talk about a woman, because I have not talked about a woman yet, and so I figured having a female to talk about a female would be great. And then I was like, let's just record this Monday, and then I hop on and they're like, it's National Women's Day, and I was like, boy, I planned that out perfectly with a surprise.
Happy to know that as you're like consciously putting in representation, then like we're gonna line this up
Yeah,
perfectly.
Converged. The stars aligned for this was perfect. If I was one of those types of people, I'd be like opening up tarot cards right now and like, I'm gonna lucky day today. Let's do it. My chakras are ready for me.
Right.
But today's topic, we'll be talking about Queen Boudica or Boudica or Boudica. You know what? There's a lot of strange information about her, so I can never like. I would watch like a bunch of different documentaries to talk about her, and every single time they said her name differently. So I'm like,
oh, lovely.
Yeah. Like I think she's like one of those women that like her name is like Megan, but then she spells it with a Y. So she's like, it's Boudica, okay, Boudica. Thank you.
Right. No, because I looked some stuff up about her, and like there's one where it's spelled with 2 C's at the end, and apparently there's a movie about her and all this other shit.
Mm-hmm.
And very interesting though.
Yeah, and so and then we're going back to the Roman era, which I'm probably going to end up having like 100 episodes on the Roman stuff, just because it's one of my favorite time periods to study. And we have Jeff King on, and we talked about a Roman battle there. So we're kind of following up again with it. So I think some things may crisscross at some point.
Well, fair.
So Queen Boudica, I think the place to start with is when talking about stuff like this in particular is kind of like talking about like in America, Native American history prior, like especially anytime prior to when we get involved, right? It's difficult to talk about because the only people that wrote about her were the Romans, who didn't want to write about her accurately.
Right.
Like, one of my favorite things to study about ancient Rome is their abilities to do basically like propaganda, like ancient propaganda. And it was basically whoever was the fastest one to get the word out or the last one surviving was just able to say whatever the fuck they wanted about somebody.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, that's pretty much how history goes, of like it's always the victors telling their story, but you never hear the other side.
Now, when you look at that, though, when you look at examples like that, you'll usually find like if a Roman wins, right? If there was like a Roman battle where they won, they would portray themselves to be the underdog. They'd be like, "Oh, we only had like 10,000 people, and they had like 20,000 people, so they had us, 2-1, but we still beat them, And then if they lost, then they would make themselves to be even more of an underdog and be like, well, yeah, we lost, but we only had 5,000 people and they had 30,000 people, right? So they would always kind of make the other side look worse and then make their side look better. But with Boudica, it's our producer's flipping us off for some reason. I don't know why. It was he just came in, just flipped the bird. That's fine.
How dare you?
But so he's still doing it. Get back to work. God, you still haven't put out my other episode. Get to work on that. I'm kidding.
He's flipping you off. Oh, now he's flipping me off.
Yeah, well, you know what? And you're so fucking lucky I don't have a webcam. Otherwise, I'd be flipping you off. Charlotte, give him the double bird for me.
Oh, I got something even better.
Oh my god.
It's a good thing you don't use visual for this.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah. If this on YouTube, it's getting demonetized, and if it was on anything else, it's getting taken down.
Pretty much. I mean, I did ask you like before. Are you sure I can say whatever I want? Like.
Oh yeah, take that, Steve. Yeah. Boy, that thing is scary, and I want to be sensitive to the audio viewers out there. Imagine like a phallic type thing like a dick, except it is a dick, and it's got like a sword handle on it, which kind of looks like a tinier dick. So that kind of looks like somebody else's dick with my dick at the bottom of it. like if you use my dick as the handle and then another dick. I'm a little bit frightened that you had that so readily available. that someone like flipped the bird and you go, oh, hold on, and you just like almost like a cartoon character, you like pulled it out from just out of nowhere and was like, I have this.
Yeah, so fun fact, I got it on Wish for $13.
Oh, of course you got it off of Wish. Of course you got off of Wish. It was probably between like a Bleach jacket and like a Power Rangers action figure, right? Like that's what Wish
pretty
does.
Much, yeah. And it, oh my god, it's arguably one of my favorite things that I own. It's very effective. Let's just put it that way.
I would imagine Queen Boudica would have used that in battle. I think she would have.
Well, I was thinking that because when I looked it up, I saw pictures of her with like swords and shit, and I'm like, well,
yeah. I think if a feminist director made a Boudica movie, I think they would probably have her charged with like a dick-shaped spear.
Right.
She'd be like, we're about to fuck these men, and then she just pulls out a giant dick. And they're like, and we'll do it with their own weapons. We'll fight fire with fire. And then she just slaps men in the face with a dick.
Pretty much, yeah. Once I can't, so when this cannot be used for its intended purposes anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Because you got to change that kind of shit out.
I get it. You know, you get old. You have performance issues.
It pretty much. Anyway, but I fully intend on using this as a weapon. And it's funny because my mom and we had a discussion. $1 million idea: just give women giant dildos to carry around with them as weapons. So because if anybody tries to come up, no one fucks with crazy.
Yeah,
and if you start swinging a giant cock around, like no one's gonna fuck with that.
It is, yeah, for sure. It is. I've always used that tactic at like growing up, where like if some guy starts stepping up to me and was like, yo, you want to fucking go, bro? You want to fucking fight? I'd be like, yeah, let's go right now. Bathroom, make out, me and you. And immediately he just wouldn't, they'd back off and be like, that's weird. I don't know what to do with that. And then they run away.
Pretty much, yeah. I got somebody tried to mug me when I lived in Baltimore, and
that sounds right.
Yeah, right. When I got back, my neighbor, the sweetest woman in the world, she was like, next time that happens, you just got to start windmilling your arms and screaming, pit bulls wear Jordans. Just start doing that, and nobody's gonna fuck with you, right?
And she said that like it was a tested, like tried and true method. Like, trust me, I did this all the time back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to an anti-Vietnam rally, the cops come and you start flailing your arms, saying, "People's way back there." Everyone else got hosed, but me. They didn't hose me. Back then, it was just taken to the loony bin.
Yeah.
We need to get back on track, otherwise, we're going to keep talking about dildos. Which, hey, we can bring up dildos again later. But Boudica's backstory. Let's see. She was the queen of the Iceni tribe, and she was like married to this dude. I can't remember his name. I tried writing it down, but he's got one of those fucking ancient names that's difficult as shit to say.
Oh, lovely.
Parkinsonax. He basically didn't have any male heirs, so he was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna give my kingdom to the Emperor of Rome as like a co-king, and then his two daughters were gonna take over."
Great.
Well, the emperor that was in charge of Rome at the time happened to be none other than Nero, the nephew of Caligula. So two of like the worst emperors to ever exist ever.
Right.
And so it doesn't go well because he dies, and then he says, "Hey, Emperor, you can own like my kingdom basically, but just like leave my people alone and let them rule by themselves. And he said, yeah, no problem. And then Nero took over and was like, I like that deal, except I didn't, and we're gonna fuck off with that.
Right.
And one of the fucked up things was when Rome was like taking over Britain, right? Because this is on the island of Britannia, and when the Iceni tribe was like, "Hey, we want to like ally with you. We don't want to go against you." The Romans were like, "Cool, that's no problem. But what we have to do is we're going to give you 40 million Roman coins so you can trade with us."
Right.
And they were like, "Here's the thing. Like, we have gold mines. Like, we have gold. We have money. Can't we just give you that?" And they're like, "No, no, 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 no. It has to be in Roman coins." So they forced a debt on them. They like forced them to take the money. They're like, no, you have to take the money. And they were like, okay. So then Nero, who is just spending money out the wazoo, is like bankrupting the empire. And he goes, I need more money. So the guy that's in charge of Britain goes, well, I have an idea. Why don't we just ask the Iceni for their debt back? Why don't we ask them to pay their bill? And so they go to them and tell them you have to pay all of it at once. So now they're forcing these people to pay back a debt that they didn't want in full.
All right. Because that makes sense.
Right. If that's not some fucking Visa, MasterCard bullshit, if I've never fucking heard of it.
Which, by the way, can we talk about, because I heard Caligula, and all that sounds like to me is just some Star Trek ass bullshit. Like,
Caligula is going to get his own episode of this, because I can talk about Caligula all fucking day. But his name is a little bit ridiculous. And once again, it's all about how it's said. I've heard Caligula, Caligula. Like, I've heard weird fucking variations of it, but he's one of my favorite guys.
Sounds like something that comes out of Spock's mouth, like, at some point.
Yes. Like, oh, yes, sir. I think we've landed on Caligula, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah. I think it's the G. I don't think there's a lot of G's in ancient things. You get a lot of, like, Suetonius, Maximus,
right,
Alexander. You don't get a lot of Gus, yeah. Except for Augustus, I guess is probably the best one. So basically, they call in the debt. They can't pay it. So then they just send Roman legions into their lands, and they just take everything from them. And then this is where Boudica becomes, like, queen of her people to badass bitch, right? Because the Romans come to her town, they take all her money, take all her shit, and when she starts mouthing off to them, as women do, right? When she starts mouthing off, going, listen here, I want to speak to your manager, they tie her up to a pole and beat the shit out of her. And then to add insult to injury, they assault her two young daughters, right? Who are princesses, right? Because she's a queen. So they assault two princesses of this ancient barbarian tribe. And so she fucking takes that shit, not lying down, and she goes and like raises an army. And initially, just among her own tribes people, and then like a neighboring one, she's able to gather more than 100,000 people, like at one time.
Right.
Which it's fucking insane. It's like that's such a large amount of people. I didn't even think that many people lived on that island at that time. Like that's a lot of people.
Right. Well, and let's be clear though, there's something to be said for a mother's rage, especially when they didn't just assault her daughters in front of her, they raped them in front of her.
Yeah.
And so even back then she's like, oh fuck no. No, I will burn down your entire empire. Fuck you.
I think this is literally the story that's like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Like I'm sure it's happened before, but I think this is like where that came from, because like and once again, because then going back on how the Romans would portray people when they wrote about stuff, they easily could have written Boudica to look worse than she did. But even in the writings they did, they made her out to be sympathetic. Like they even wrote like, yeah, fucking that crazy guy Nero did some shit he shouldn't have done, and they did some bad stuff to her daughters. Like they didn't have to include that part. They could have left that part out, and then it just seemed like Boudica was just crazy, wanting to kill shit. But they included that stuff, which is fascinating, because when you do propaganda, it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, don't make us look bad, But they were like, yeah, but that's they're like, it's still an interesting story.
Yeah.
So Boudica goes over to her next door neighbors and are like, "Yo, some shit happened. It's not cool. I kind of want to go fuck their shit. Do you guys want to join me?" And she gets a bunch of tribes, and then she goes to let's see, I had to write it down. She goes to this place called Camalodonum. Camalodonum. Now, do you happen to know anything about British geography? Like, do you know any places in England?
I mean, I know of places. I can't exactly place them on a map.
Oh, that's no problem. If you could think of a place, what do you think this ancient place eventually became? If you don't know, it was
Are we talking
Camalodonum.
like England, Britain, or are we talking like Europe, Britain?
Yeah, like England, like the actual island of England. So not Ireland or Scotland, like
Okay.
just the island of England. Just name a city. Take a guess.
Brixton.
Probably close. It would actually become Colchester.
Oh.
Colchester, England. So she comes up to this place with over 100,000 people, and they see this giant army of and these people too. Celts are fucking terrifying people to fight, right? So an interesting note is the British Celts were actually the first ones, at least in ancient times, to create chainmail, right? So even the Romans, like they used sets of armor almost like knights, where they had plated armor that went over normally just normal clothes. The Britons were the first one that actually made chainmail. However, the chainmail were also reserved for like those that could afford it. So any of the fighters that were like normal farmers and then they decided to fight, they just like took off all their clothes and then painted their bodies in war paint, like their whole bodies. So you have these hairy fucking disgusting guys with like matted hair and shit with like axes and sticks, like all painted up and shit, and you have 100,000 of them coming up on your city that has no walls or defenses of any kind.
Oh my god, that's fantastic!
Yeah, I think that's a pants shitting moment.
Literally, just dick swinging, just
yeah. Like, and so somebody sends word that they need help, and they send it to a local legion, and this guy is like, but wait, it's being led by a woman. A woman's in front of this army. Oh, okay, but okay, I'll send reinforcements, and I'm doing the air quotes there, right? Because he sends 3 auxiliary units, which are basically like slave like soldiers that they just take from places and then put weapons in their hands. Except he didn't even put weapons in their hands. He gave them like sticks, like sharpened sticks.
Oh, fun!
He was like, okay, go spank the women and put them back in Yieldy kitchen, right? Like go put them back in the, I don't know what a kitchen would look like back then, in the fire pit, right? So he sends like 200 of these guys who are on their way to like relieve the city, and Boudica takes her forces. She herself leads a force of people that ambushes them and kills all of them.
Fantastic.
And then her army surrounds the city, comes up on it. They tear down a statue of Nero that was there. They cut off the head of the statue and they take it back to their camp. They burn down the city, and then there's like a temple, like a Roman temple set up. They surround the temple, and the last of the people are like held up there. They just fucking eventually set the place on fire. They just murder everybody in the city. And what's even more fucked too is that city actually used to be the capital for one of the tribes that she like sides with. Like she went to them and was like, "Hey, do you remember how they took your big city? Let's go fucking burn it to the ground." Like, it's real punk shit. It's so fucking like, oh, your parents ground you? Let's go fucking destroy your room.
Right, exactly.
Burn your fucking house down.
Well, it shows, and the funny thing is, like, I don't know exactly where this falls, but I guarantee you they didn't learn shit from this, and is part of the reason that Cleopatra was able to eventually, like, do her shit. All
well, and it's so funny you said that, because I was thinking the exact same thing in the other episode where that was a Roman topic, with Jeff King. That's episode 2. If you guys want to go back to it, in that episode we talk about a battle that took place in Rome, where a Germanic people rose up against Rome, and then they were able to take out like 3 legions in the middle of the forest and killed a bunch of them. Right, that happened like 60 to 80 years prior to this. Right, like this happened before. So literally, this is the example of like them not learning how to fucking take care of people. Like it's like had you maybe not been so fucking rude to these people and done everything you had, fucking Rome would have been perfectly fine. But they fucking they couldn't fucking figure it out. They're fucking idiots.
Right.
And they let it repeat.
Because like there's a lot of cool stuff about Roman culture and everything that, had it gone through and gotten updated for modern times, world might have been a cooler place.
Oh, for sure.
But no, they had to be a bunch of jock blockhead fucking idiots. And it's like, oh no, it's like, yeah, okay. And that's
now,
why he defeated you.
And now all we have is Italy.
Exactly. And
I can't believe out of all of Rome, all we have is Italy.
Yeah.
So fucking disappointing. So
just Guidos now, and it's just
about your fucking
I am Italian.
So after she burns, she burns this town to the ground so hard, right? That when archaeologists were like uncovering the ancient city that that she took, they literally found like the foundations of the city, and then they found a thick layer of soot and like ash. and then the stuff that was on top, like they literally were like, they actually called it like Boudica's ashes. Like that's how they that's what they called it. They're like, this is the foundation, this is Boudica's ashes, and this is the dirt on top. So after that, she then takes her army and she goes to another place called Londinium. Can you imagine what city that became?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. If everyone's thinking it's Worcestershire. So it's actually where we get Worcestershire sauce. So
there.
Yeah, so she goes to what will eventually become London and does the exact same thing, except the guys that are in London kind of figure some shit out, because they see all the massive people. Because now, reportedly, her army goes from 100,000 people to 200,000. Like, she literally, like, burning down one city, she's able to like double her force.
God damn.
So she's coming up on there. The guys there, like the Romans there, are like, we're fucked. So they basically attempt to like evacuate as many people as they can, and then they head towards another legion. That because a reason that like she was able to do all this was because the biggest army that was there, and the one that was like in charge of keeping the peace, was like basically on the other side of the island, like doing something else. Like they were like trying to conquer some other people or going campaigning some other place. And so she picked like the perfect time. Yeah. And this shows too how smart Boudica is as a leader, that she waited until the largest army that would be the problem was far away before she started doing her stuff. Because another thing to note too was that many years before this, the Romans had already basically de-weaponed everybody. They had gone to the tribes and said, give us your weapons. You can't have swords. You can't have metal stuff. So a lot of these people are really working with literal sticks. Like they're throwing rocks and sticks, and that's all they're really working with. Right. So at least for the amount of people, like I said, it's at this point 200,000 people. They don't have all those weapons. Like they're basically using what they steal from Romans that they kill.
Right.
So they go to Londinium, do the exact same thing. Anybody that's left in that city, the city gets burnt to the ground and destroyed. Then they move on to another city that's close by and do the same thing. So she destroys 3 cities all within like, I think it's like 2 weeks, like a 2-week period, destroys 3 cities, burns them to the ground, and then she meets this army, because the army that was coming down met up with the other legion. And so now there's 2 legions that are on this place called Watling Street, which is like this big road that runs through England. And they're basically like set up in this defensive position, like, come at us, bitch. They're daring her, but you know what? She's like, you know what? I'm fucking coming. I'm on my way.
Oh yeah. She's like, I've gotten this far. I ain't stopping now.
Yeah, it's like we're things about to fucking go down. So she comes up on this army that has set themselves up in like a narrow plain where there's like trees surrounding them, so they're kind of defended, against. And her army comes in. Now, the Britons were so, they were so optimistic about winning that they had actually taken like family members and put them on a wagon train and set them up on top of the hill, like looking down at the battle. Like they were like, "Hey kids!" Like it was like bring your kid to war day. It was like they literally just had them just sitting in wagons and shit. And it'll come to be kind of their undoing.
Right.
So the Romans set up their shit, and then she sets up her army. She makes this like cool speech. At least like the Romans wrote it down. Again, you can trust them worth a fucking grain of salt. But once again, an interesting thing is like she may not have said this speech, but what they came up with was pretty cool. Because she was basically like, listen, I know I'm a queen, but I'm not coming to you as a queen right now. I'm coming to you as a regular person that got beaten, got assaulted, and my children were raped.
Right.
I'm coming to you as a person that wants revenge for stuff that happened to me and my people. Right? And then she says, I, a woman, am going to go in there and fight to the death. You men can be slaves or whatever you want to. Right? Like she basically calls out the men and are like, I'm going to be in there fighting until we win or until I die. So I hope you guys have the same fortitude I do. And it's just it's I love seeing shit like that because that's so funny that like you see that today. Like when you watch a movie with a female heroine, you always get that kind of speech of like, well, I'm a fucking woman and I'm gonna crack heads and chew bubblegum until I'm out and I kick ass, whatever, right? Like they have that speech, and it's like, dude, fucking Boudica was doing that back when like she was wearing loincloth, essentially. Like it's
oh yeah. Like she literally like I said, when I looked up the stuff about her, she I was like, oh, okay, because she literally like full Viking outfit, war paint, tattoos, all this shit, like, and I was like, oh yes, we're fucking doing this.
Yeah, and then she was on like she'd be on like a war chariot too, which is just even better. She's got two fucking
of course
horses pull her on like a throne where she just chucks spears at people. It's like, fuck yeah.
I mean, how else? I mean, that's how you gotta go in and fucking get your. Gotta have a little bit of style. Come on now.
Absolutely. And because like whenever I think of fun stuff like that, I always think in my head like if I had to put an actor in that role, who would it be? I would only choose Sigourney Weaver. Just because like I get the same vibe from like Sigourney Weaver from like Aliens, in terms of like this just powerful don't fuck with me woman.
Right.
Now obviously if you want to go more accurate to what she is, I'm sure you could probably pick probably a character from Game of Thrones or something. I don't know. Maybe girl that plays Brienne of Tarth, but just I was like, for me it's Sigourney Weaver.
I don't know. I mean, I can see that 1,000%. I don't know. Scarlett Johansson, she always like her depiction of Black Widow and everything. Like, is that same energy kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm trying to think of other examples. I don't watch a ton of action movies. I mostly watch comedy, so I'm like,
yeah. So she goes into battle. Now, unfortunately, however, what you have now is you have essentially a bunch of like 200,000 people with not much in terms of weapons fighting against legitimate Roman army, like at the peak of their training, and
Right.
you actually have an amazing defeat, right? Like, and it's amazing. The show HBO had a show. Basically, it was like them trying to do Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones happened, and it's called Rome.
Right.
It's a good show. They try to. I think they try to. They couldn't figure out the algorithm of how to make a really big, expensive show without spending all the money on like certain things and like how to space out the story enough. But there's a couple of battle scenes there. There's one of them where they actually show the tactics that the Romans would use. So you would have them set up in like a box formation. You'd have the front line of soldiers that they all have shields, and they would basically let units charge into them, and they'd shield it, and then they push them with their shield and stab them with their sword.
Smart.
Now, hand-to-hand combat is a difficult thing to do for like a long period of time, right? That's why MMA, boxers, any of that kind of stuff, you do it in short bursts, right? Like a boxing round is like 5 minutes, an MMA round is 5 minutes, and then you take a break, and then you fight again.
Right.
And the Romans knew that, so they would have like the leader of that unit would have a whistle, and every 6 or 7 minutes or so, he would blow the whistle. The front line would use their shields, push people back, and then the next person behind them would come forward, put up their shield, and that person would walk back through the ranks and get in the back of the line.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then every 6 minutes that would happen, and so each person had their time of rest before they had to go back in, and that's how they were able to keep their units fresh, and stuff like that. So now you have a unit that can do that and keep their soldiers like ready to go, have them rested, in between bursts of stabbing, versus basically an army of naked, crazy, painted up Britons.
Right.
And amazingly, the Britons lose, even though they're insanely outnumbering the Romans. Because of this tactic, they're able to beat them. But even worse, as the Romans are beating the Britons start to retreat, but they retreat back into that wagon formation that was set up. The wagons literally stopped the Britons from being able to run away.
Yeah, I remember reading about that they cut off their only way out.
Yeah, they cut off their only way out, and then the Romans just go through and kill everybody. They say they killed like 80,000 people, including the people on the trains, which is why you don't take your children to work.
Yeah.
Like that was the lesson I took away from it. Is the next time my mom's like, "Do you want to see what I do for work?" I'm like, "No." So I can be like put into a printing machine and killed? No, thank you.
Exactly.
Get run over by your boss in the parking lot? No. Not an option. Boudica gets she gets, it's one of those things where like her story basically is cut off there because they don't really know what happened to her. She didn't die on the battlefield, but she was possibly wounded and then died later, or it was said that she died of an illness afterwards. So one of those things, like I think I was talking in an episode, I kind of like things like this because you can kind of you can just kind of make up your own little fan fiction about it.
Well, I mean, too fairly said, either she got wounded and that had complications. I mean, it's not like they had MRI machines and shit like that. So an illness could very well be sepsis or what have you from getting stabbed.
Yeah. And even back then, a flu was an illness that would kill you. So
right,
it could have been anything.
And when I looked it up, it said like, oh, there's two different theories on why this happened. One is she was assaulted and her dad dying and blah 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 blah. The other was there was this debt. Reality is it was both. Actually, going back to that movie because I looked it back up, it came out in 2003. Mm-hmm. It's called Boudica, although some countries, I think in America, it's called Warrior Queen, and it's starring Alex Kingston, actually, who is, for anybody who's a Doctor Who fan, she is River Song, and she's a fantastic actress. And the fact that they cast her and what we were talking about who would, work for that role, she is like perfect.
Yeah.
Because River is very much the same way.
Yeah.
And plus Alex Kingston, I believe she was also on Grey's Anatomy.
Ooh.
I might be wrong, but
my wife does
she
love
was on
Grey's
something,
Anatomy.
or she might have been on ER. I think it was ER actually.
I think it was ER.
I knew it was some medical drama shit, but still. But yeah, so that very much makes sense.
Yeah.
And now I want to go watch it because it's like River.
Well, and I'll need to watch the movie because this falls under one of those things of like whenever Hollywood wants to make a movie,
right?
And then they say, well, we want to make a movie with a female protagonist, right? Too many times. And this bothers me. I know it doesn't bother everyone, but this bothers me. They go, how can we make a female protagonist? They're like, what if we made John Wick a woman? What if we made Thor a woman? What if we made, they're like, what if we take somebody and then just make them into a woman?
Right.
It's like, why take somebody and turn them into a woman when you have a woman? You have one. Do her.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That is the thing. It doesn't just bother you. In fact, an issue not just with female characters, but like queer people of color, anything like that. It's like, let's make Black Spider-Man. I mean, there is a Black Spider-Man, but like, you know what I mean? For lack of my he-who brain, but he, or let's make a queer this or whatever. It's like, or you could make original characters and not stop and not keep fucking up already established characters that are already good. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need, and it's one of those things of like, kind of like, Aunt Jemima isn't really a thing anymore, and it's only a matter of time till Uncle Ben is gone and this and that. It's like, I get it. Representation is important and how you do it is important. I get it. But also, that's not the important thing right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Black people in particular is like, okay, cool. But like, we stop killing us. Like, the way they
like
did
that's the message is like, stop abusing us, stop killing us, not the guy on the rice box.
Right, like the new one right now is Mr. Potato Head. Like, like nobody who is queer actually gives a fuck about that. Like,
especially when like the idea of Mr. Potato Head too was that you could make him into whatever you wanted, and if you bought like the pieces that came with Mr. Potato Head, it also came with the pieces to make Mrs. Potato Head.
Right.
So you could have made him whichever one you wanted.
Right. You could have done.
You could have tits and a mustache and a purse with pecs. Like, you could have made him any kind of fucking way.
Pretty much. Like, and it's just, and so a perfect example of how to continue with this is Black Panther. It was already an established character, but it was a Black character that they were able to like cash in on, and everything else.
And then they had the cast of it was filled with
there was
actors of that one. Exactly. The director, a lot of the people making the movie, it's like that's perfect. It's like it's for the people, by the people,
you have that for all kinds of races. You have that for women. You have that, like, the characters are there. They just want to focus on the cash cows that they keep beating to death as is.
And especially when it comes to historical movies, so many times they will change. Like, if there is a movie based in some kind of history, they'll make characters up, or they'll take a character that didn't do anything and make them do something. And it's like, but you already have a person with a fantastic story. You don't have to do anything to it. Just put it onto film and you have the perfect story.
Right.
And this is like, Boudica is one of those stories that I'm like, how has there not been, especially today, a major motion picture? Like, there was the movie made in 2003, But I'm like, how have you not made a bigger one? This could be a
Right.
blockbuster and then a drama-filled story. Like if you have the beginning of the movie starting out with her getting whipped and that
Right.
and the thing that happened with her family, like that would set the tone of the movie for just like, oh, you know.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you have her speeches where you have this moment because the other thing too was that she was a druid, and a druid, and the term druid gets thrown around a lot, especially because of its placements in D&D and magic and all that kind of stuff, right?
Fucking nerds.
Fucking nerds. But a druid in Celtic society was basically just an old person. It was just a person that lived old and was experienced, right? But they were philosophers. They studied sciences, like usually alchemy, but
Right.
they studied medicine. Like they were just the intellectuals of that society. So she was a druid because druids could be women,
Right.
and so there were people that also believed she was magic. One of the times where she had a meeting to discuss gathering this army together, she did so by like using like some magic shit. She pulled out a rabbit like out of her dress and then
Right.
like foretold where it was gonna go, and the rabbit went exactly where she said it was gonna go. Like she was like, it's gonna like go around the fire and then dart off to the left. And it did exactly that. So then they were like, oh shit, this woman's magical. So not
Right.
only is she a queen of a king that we loved and is getting fucked, but now she's a magical queen. So I'm like, dude, you have like Frozen and a John Wick chick put together.
Right.
Make it into a fucking movie, man.
Well, as we all know, Hollywood never fucking listens.
I know. Well, and it's so, and it bothers me too whenever they like. I think it was like the one, I can't remember who did it, but the woman that made the most recent Charlie's Angels, like the when it didn't do well at the box office, she said, "Well, that's just because men are afraid of watching strong women." But shut the fuck up. If you make a movie about Queen Boudica and you just have her killing a bunch of guys, I'll watch it. I'll watch it 9 out of 9 times. Like I'll buy that movie on DVD. I'll buy it on VHS. Like I'll watch that movie 100%.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's a matter of, like I said before, stop taking established characters and butchering them like, oh, we need this kind of yes, we need that kind of representation, but make your own fucking characters. There's so many stories that haven't been told or have been told in a shitty way,
Mhm.
like, it's just not fucking necessary.
Yeah. So yeah, I could. Yeah, I would. Like I would watch that movie. Like if it ever does happen, like I'll be super excited for it. But that's like an unfortunate thing though. Is like any kind of historical movies. It seems like there has to be like a mood for it, right? Like there was a time where people were making a shit ton of like Roman based stuff, right? Because then you had Gladiator, then you had Spartacus, and
Right.
then not only Game of Thrones, but like Game of Thrones is kind of more fantasy medieval, I guess.
Mhm.
But like but then you had just a bunch of Roman or even Greek Alexander the Great, like the movie Alexander the Great. Like people had like they love that shit, and now fucking no one gives a shit. You won't see a movie like that for a long time, right? But
Yeah.
but then people started making like they had periods of people like making Civil War movies and then World War II movies. You had so many like Saving Private Ryan, Skinwalker, the one with Nicolas Cage about the Native American guys. I can't remember the name of that movie.
Uh,
Fuck.
n- what,
Something. It's something Walker. I know it is. Anyway, but yeah. So when it comes
Ghost
to
Rider?
making Ghost, yeah, it was Ghost Rider. Yeah, the World War II movie with Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider. But yeah, so when it comes to like Hollywood and history movies, there has to be like a mood for it, a want for it. Otherwise, they won't do it.
Right.
So hopefully, they like get back in the mood
Right.
to make a Boudica Roman movie because I'll fucking watch it, no fucking problem.
Oh yeah. No, same. And like I said, I'm gonna see if I can find the other one because now I just please, please. Oh
Mm-hmm.
god. I love Alex Kingston so much.
That's like one of my. I mean, and this kind of goes into whenever I talk to people about history. Whenever they're like, I didn't like history because like teachers didn't teach it right. I'm like, honestly, if you want to learn about history, you have to do it yourself. Because
Right.
I would read something about history and then I would Google it, and if I found out there was a movie about it, I'd watch the movie, and then after watching the movie, I'd look up the real story and then find out what was inaccurate with the movie. So then I actually learned what was real about it. You
Right.
know, I would do that all the time, and then you just like that's how you get interested. You don't do it out of school; you do it out of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, the American education system, quite frankly, is fucked. As someone of within our friend group who's probably the most recent, one of the most recent to have gotten out of high school, you know, it just like they don't care about actually having you learn the shit that you need to know, and they care about you being complacent and filling out
Mm-hmm.
forms and this and that,
Yeah.
you know. And they care about like certain specific types of information that you get, but
Mm-hmm.
not like, you know, if they actually cared about you learning, they would ask you more vague questions of what did you actually learn about this, blah 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 blah
Mm-hmm.
blah.
Yeah. Like what to take away from it. Yeah.
Right.
Like, I always do this. I always bring up stuff on this on the same podcast. People, I'm sure people that listen to it are like, you fucking said that like twice before. Said on episode 3 and episode 2. What the fuck? But yeah, no. When the thing about, I think the thing that I would change in the education system about history is specifically change it from remembering dates and names to actually analyzing history and
Right.
teaching it and being like, yes, this happened and this is why it's important. Yes, this
Right.
thing happened and this is why you should know it. You know,
Right. And
because
see that,
when
and that's the like big problem because like in Germany, and it shows why like things here are the way they are in terms of politics and shit, because
Mhm.
that is how they teach it of you need to know these dates and these names because they're important, but they never tell you why. Like
Yeah.
they tell you these things happen, but they don't tell you why they're important in the grand scheme of things. So like in
Hmm.
Germany, they don't hide away from World War II and they're part in it. They're like, no, we did this and it was wrong and here's
Hmm.
why. And like, no, like,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing this shit again. Whereas in America, we kind of sugarcoat everything. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, this happened and blah, blah, blah. But you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so it's like, and that's why, like, granted, this is a very like kind of cliche-ish kind of thing, only because it's one of the bigger things that has been said, although it is important, which is ultimately Black History Month, like it was supposed to be dissolved at a certain point because it's like Black history is American history at the
Right.
end of the day. So we shouldn't just focus on it one time, one part of the year. We should focus on it all the fucking time.
Yeah.
You know, it was meant to be the like transition period of like
Yeah.
getting schools more used to teaching this
Yeah.
kind of shit.
Well, and then
You know,
too, because people will always bring up history, especially on social media and stuff, and when they're trying to present certain messages, and whenever people try to use history to put a message, I critique it heavily because I'm like, let's see
right,
what you're actually saying. Because if it's accurate, then let's analyze it. If you're not accurate, then shut the hell up.
right,
Because whenever Black History Month or Woman History Month or whatever, like any of these kinds of things that are meant to showcase these people, you'll always see people on Facebook going, "Did you know this guy created peanut butter? How come no one knows who created peanut butter was a black guy? How come no one's teaching that?" And I
right.
read that stuff and I go, I knew that. I knew that. Either I learned it in history or I learned it myself. I'm like,
Right.
if you don't know the guy that created peanut butter was black, that sounds like a you problem, man. Open
I
up
mean,
a fucking
honestly,
book.
that was the number one thing that they hammered into us in when I was in school was,
Yeah.
Benjamin Carver. Uh, God, I hope I got that right. I got he who brain.
Yeah.
Like it's been so long, but like it's still like you know Frederick Douglass, all that shit. And granted, I went to
Yeah.
school in Baltimore City, but even so,
Yeah. Well,
like
and yeah, like if I sat down and tried to name as many like black inventors or some or notable black figures, I could probably put in a dozen, right? And then people will say, well, I can't, and that just shows like, you know, the education system, which is bad. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying it's like it is bad. But if you don't know this, that's on you. Go learn it.
Well,
like there are people that know this stuff. Yeah.
Well, I do agree with you, like wholeheartedly. It's like you should want to go out and learn this shit anyway, just because you know it's fun to learn this kind of shit.
And especially if you're going to use it as like oh, look what they don't teach us. No, go learn it.
Well, that's part of the problem is a lot because of how this country has built the education system. It makes it so that people hear the word learning and education and facts and stuff like that, and they cringe because they remember school and how horrible it was, and so then they don't care, and so they don't make an effort to go and actually learn, and they don't realize that some of the things that they read on Facebook, if they are accurate, it's like, oh no, you are learning because you're reading and taking in new information. That's what the thing is, but they don't have the forethought for that. So
always with the goddamn school systems.
Great. And that's the fight, because I was just thinking, like, it's not just a lot of people think, oh, it's because bullying and this and that, which is a problem. Like, trust me, that is a problem. But it's not just that, though. Because it's also, like, they're trying to, like, mold you and shape you so you'll be perfect for a dead-end 9-to-5 job. But, yeah, no, it just, like I said, the education system gives people PTSD, so they don't want to learn. And then now we have a mass of willfully ignorant people.
Yeah.
And we see where that's gotten us.
It's gotten us down the hole.
Right.
And we must climb out.
Fun.
And we can climb out if we just have a movie about Queen Boudica.
Pretty much, yeah. That's all we need. Just strong female figures. It's what we've been saying for decades, God damn it.
And then after that, then we can have a movie on another strong female woman like Queen Elizabeth and how she's lived to be 160 years old.
Right. Well, if we're going to do that, might as well Betty White. No, we'll do that with Betty White playing Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, perfect. Oh gosh, yes.
Great.
I would watch a Queen Elizabeth Betty White movie.
God. So
hard.
I have a theory as to why both of them are still alive, particularly Betty White.
Vampires?
Close. Kind of Hollywood vampires. So the in Family Guy when James Woods is a thing, and he dies, and so they bring him back by getting this young, like 20-something blonde actress from off the street in Hollywood, and they strap her down and they like suck her life force out of her and give it. Pretty sure that's what they do to Betty, like all the other bigger celebrities that have died. So it's like, you know what I mean? Because she's bigger and stronger and has been around longer, so she needs more star power than just